There was a guy who moved into a small town because he was gonna be the town doctor. When he gets there, the town receives him with open arms, but this lady said something really weird. She says, "I just hope they don't scare you off." And that threw him off because he's like, no, I'm glad to be here. No one's gonna scare me off. But the way she said it kind of caught him off guard. So time would pass and he started working at the clinic. He says that he also started getting to know a lot of the people in the town. And there was a night where, for the very first time ever, he had to stay in the clinic a little later. So he finishes everything he had to do and he was about to close for the night, and that was when an old lady walked into the clinic. She starts telling him that she hasn't eaten in a few days and that she can't sleep, and she asked him if he could check her. And he was like, well, I was about to close, but sure, let me see if there's anything we can find. So he puts her into the room. He checks her vitals, like just a normal thing that happens when you go into the doctor's office, and he doesn't see anything out of the ordinary. So he tells her, like, maybe you're experiencing the symptoms because you haven't eaten and you haven't slept. Maybe you need to go home and you need to get some rest. And the older lady was like, no, I feel too bad. Can I just stay the night here? And the doctor explains to her that this isn't like a hospital. This isn't an overnight kind of clinic, that he only sees patients during the day and nobody stays there. They're not even equipped to have somebody stay there overnight. He explains to her that if patients come in where they need to be monitored, he does call the hospital, come for them, but like no one stays there. And again, she's insistent on staying at the clinic. And he tells her, unfortunately, like, if you stay here, I can get in trouble, so you can't stay in this clinic. And he even tells her, look, go home, have some tea, and go to bed. I think you need some rest. So somehow this doctor convinced her to go home and drink some tea and go to rest, and he locks up and goes home. So the doctor gets home and he is so tired, so he's ready to go to bed. However, he says that when he finally falls asleep, he feels the sleep paralysis episode coming on. So he says that he couldn't breathe. He felt like an immense amount of pressure on his chest. He couldn't move, he couldn't talk. However, he was able to see this like black shadow on the foot of his bed, and then when the black shadow started moving on top of him towards his head. He says that he was trying to move and he would attempt to open and close his eyes, and all he would see is that shadow. But in that second where he closed his eyes and opened them back again, he saw the face of that same old lady that was at the clinic trying to stay. When he saw her face, he said that that's what like startled him so bad that he got out of that sleep paralysis, turned the light on, looked around the room, and there was nobody there. But it scared him so much to the point where he couldn't go back to sleep. He did not sleep at all that night. He had convinced himself that he felt so guilty about sending that lady home, that could be the reason why he had that sleep paralysis and saw her face, because he admits that even when she left, he felt so guilty like sending her home, but he knew that there was nothing wrong with her and all she needed was to go to bed. So it's the following day and he goes to work, and he says that there's a nurse there, and as he's walking in, the nurse looks at him and she's like, are you okay? You look so tired, like you haven't slept all night. And he was like, no, I could not sleep, but let me tell you what happened, because he was about to tell her about the lady and then that he had the sleep paralysis episode and he saw her. And the nurse was like, oh, don't tell me she came and scared you already. And he was like, what do you mean? So the nurse started describing the lady to see if it was the same one that he'd seen. And she started saying, no, she's a little older lady, she's really skinny, and she gave him details, and he was like, yeah, that's the lady that came last night. And then the nurse was like, and let me guess, she told you that she wanted to stay the night in the clinic. And he was like, how do you know this? And the nurse tells him, well, she's done that a couple of times to every new doctor that comes into the clinic. So he then tells her, like, yeah, she came last night, she kept insisting that she wanted to stay, but there was nothing wrong with her, and honestly I started feeling guilty for sending her home. And he was like, yeah, I think that's why I had a dream about her, because I felt so guilty that I sent her home and she couldn't stay here. And the nurse was like, no doctor, that wasn't a dream. She did come. She does that to every new doctor, and it's because a very long time ago she came into the clinic and a doctor refused to see her because it was time for him to leave. And when she went home that night, she passed away at home by herself. She explains that the lady's husband had already passed away. When she died, she was there alone at home. After that, every time we get a new doctor, she comes and scares them. And he just didn't even know what to say, because as much as he would like to have an explanation for what happened, she knew what had happened before he even told her the whole thing. Because he was like, the nurse wouldn't have known details about this lady because nobody was here when she even came last night. So for her to know exactly what she looked like, he cannot make sense of it. He also admits that before that incident, he didn't believe in the paranormal, and after that, he was not a skeptic any further.